What if I told you that one of the most powerful feelings a human being can experience can begin in just a matter of seconds? Not friendship, not trust, not loyalty, and not even love itself, but something that often comes before all of them: attraction. Have you ever experienced this? You're sitting in a classroom, walking through a cafe, attending an event, working in an office, scrolling through social media, or simply passing by a stranger. And then something changes. You notice someone you've never met before, someone whose personality you know nothing about. You don't know their history, their dreams, their fears, their habits, their flaws. You know almost nothing about them. And yet, for some reason, you can't stop thinking about them. You notice their smile, the way they speak, the way they laugh, the way they carry themselves. And before you fully understand what's happening, your attention keeps returning to them. Hours later, days later, sometimes even weeks later. But why? How can someone who was a complete stranger just moments ago suddenly become the center of your thoughts? Is it love at first sight? Is it destiny? Is it coincidence? Or is there something much deeper happening inside the human brain? Tonight, we are exploring one of the most fascinating mysteries of human psychology, a phenomenon that has inspired poems, songs, movies, novels, and countless love stories throughout history. A phenomenon nearly every human being has experienced. This is the story of why we can start liking someone so quickly. Let's begin with a surprising fact. Your brain forms impressions of people far faster than you realize. Much faster. In fact, before you've even exchanged a single word with someone, your brain has already begun evaluating them. It notices facial expressions, body language, posture, eye contact, voice tone, movement, energy, and within seconds, it starts building an impression. Most of this process happens automatically. You don't consciously decide to do it. Your brain simply does. Which means that attraction often begins long before you're aware of it. This is one reason attraction feels so mysterious. It doesn't usually feel like a choice. You don't sit down and logically decide, today I will become interested in this person. Attraction rarely works that way. Instead, it arrives unexpectedly, almost as if it appeared out of nowhere. But beneath the surface, a tremendous amount of processing is taking place. One of the biggest factors behind attraction is familiarity. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. The principle is surprisingly simple. The more often we encounter something, the more likely we are to like it. This applies to songs, foods, brands, places, and people. Think about a song you didn't particularly enjoy the first time you heard it. After hearing it repeatedly, it suddenly became your favorite. The same thing can happen with people. The more frequently we see someone, the more familiar they become. And familiarity creates comfort. Comfort creates trust. And trust often creates attraction. This is one reason why so many relationships begin at school, college, workplaces, neighborhoods, or shared social circles. Sometimes attraction grows simply because two people repeatedly occupy the same space. But familiarity is only part of the story. Another major factor is emotion. Imagine meeting someone during one of the happiest days of your life. Perhaps you've just received good news, achieved an important goal, finished an exciting project, or enjoyed a wonderful experience. Your brain may unconsciously connect those positive emotions with the person you meet. As a result, they seem more attractive, more interesting, more memorable, even though the positive feelings may have originated elsewhere. This psychological effect is surprisingly powerful. Sometimes we think we're responding entirely to another person, when in reality, we're also responding to how they make us feel. Now let's talk about physical appearance. This topic often makes people uncomfortable, but from a biological perspective, appearance matters. Not because humans are shallow, but because our brains evolved to make rapid judgments based on limited information. For hundreds of thousands of years, appearance provided clues about health, strength, energy, and reproductive fitness. The problem is, our brains often take these assumptions much further than they should. Psychologists call this the halo effect. When we find someone physically attractive, we often assume other positive traits as well. We may unconsciously believe they are smarter, kinder, more trustworthy, more capable, even when we have no evidence for those conclusions. Our brains are essentially filling in missing information, and they often do so in surprisingly biased ways. But attraction isn't only about appearance. In many cases, attention is even more powerful. Human beings have a deep need to feel valued, to feel noticed, to feel understood, to feel important. When someone genuinely listens to us, remembers small details, shows curiosity about our lives, or makes us feel appreciated, something powerful happens. We begin associating them with positive emotions, and positive emotions are incredibly attractive. This is where brain chemistry enters the picture. When we become interested in someone, the brain releases various chemicals. One of the most important is dopamine. Dopamine is often associated with motivation and reward. It creates feelings of anticipation, excitement, pleasure, and curiosity. When the person we like sends a message, dopamine increases. When they smile at us, dopamine increases. When they give us attention, dopamine increases. Over time, our brain starts identifying that person as a source of reward, and naturally, it wants more. This is one reason why someone can suddenly occupy so much space in our thoughts. We're not always choosing to think about them. Our brain keeps highlighting them as important, as interesting, as rewarding. And as a result, they continue returning to our minds again and again. But perhaps the most fascinating part of attraction is this. Sometimes we are not falling for the person themselves. We are falling for our idea of them. Think about it. When you first meet someone, you know very little about them. There are countless gaps in your knowledge, and the human brain dislikes gaps. It prefers complete stories, so it begins filling in the missing pieces. With assumptions, with hopes, with imagination, with possibilities. We start imagining who they are, what they're like, what a future with them might feel like. And often, the version we create inside our minds becomes far more perfect than reality. This is why intense attraction can develop so quickly. Because it isn't just the other person affecting us. It's also our imagination, our dreams, our expectations, and our curiosity, all working together. Another powerful ingredient is similarity. Research consistently shows that people tend to be attracted to others who share similarities with them. Similar values, similar interests, similar goals, similar beliefs, similar senses of humor. When we meet someone who feels familiar, someone who understands us, someone who sees the world in a similar way, our brains experience a sense of safety. And safety often leads to connection. Yet attraction contains a fascinating contradiction. Sometimes we become attracted to people who are completely different from us. Why? Because difference can be exciting, novel, mysterious. Someone who possesses qualities we lack may seem incredibly interesting. They represent a world we haven't explored, and humans are naturally drawn to mystery. Now, let's discuss something almost everyone has experienced: thinking about someone constantly. Why does this happen? Why can a person we barely know suddenly dominate our thoughts? The answer may lie in something psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect. The brain dislikes unfinished stories, unanswered questions, incomplete information. And when a relationship is uncertain, our minds keep trying to solve the puzzle. Do they like me? What are they thinking? Will something happen between us? What does this mean? Because there are no clear answers, the brain keeps returning to the question, over and over again. Interestingly, uncertainty can sometimes strengthen attraction. If someone is completely predictable, always available, and always obvious, the mystery disappears. But when we don't know exactly how they feel, when their intentions remain unclear, our curiosity intensifies. And curiosity is one of the strongest fuels for attraction. But perhaps the most important thing to understand is this: there is nothing strange about liking someone quickly. There is nothing unusual about it. And there is certainly nothing wrong with it. It is simply part of being human, part of how our brains evolved, part of how emotions work, part of how we form connections. Because humans are not purely logical creatures. We are emotional creatures. We seek connection, meaning, belonging, understanding. We search for people who make life feel more interesting, more exciting, more alive. And sometimes, all of that can begin with a single smile, a brief conversation, a shared glance, a random encounter, a moment that seems insignificant at the time, yet changes everything afterward. So the next time you find yourself wondering, why do I like this person so much? Remember this: the answer is far more complex than fate, more complex than coincidence, and more complex than simple attraction. It is the result of millions of years of evolution, countless neural connections, powerful brain chemicals, past experiences, emotions, memories, expectations, and imagination, all working together at the same time, creating one of the most extraordinary experiences a human can have. A feeling that has inspired songs, created stories, started relationships, changed lives, and made hearts beat faster for thousands of years. Because in the end, being able to like someone so quickly is not a flaw in the human mind. It is one of its most remarkable features, and perhaps one of the reasons being human is so fascinating.